Hello and welcome in to another installment of the My Wheelhouse Basketball podcast on the We Got Paul's podcast network. I'm your host, Sheamus McNamara. I am joined today, December 19th, by the usual guest, Steve Trudeau. Steve, what is your favorite Christmas song?
Wow, great way to start. I'm going to go off the cuff here and something a little different. Feliz Navidad gets me going.
What? It's crazy. Crazy number one choice.
I'm so upset because that's my number one choice.
Wow.
I just got
robbed.
The
outlandish agreement that you hear is our special guest joining us from Chicago, or actually he might not be in Chicago right now. Dear friend of mine, Al Biddies Datola, returning guest to the My Wheelhouse Basketball podcast. Biddies, what is your favorite ornament on your Christmas tree?
Oh man, good to be back, Shay. Favorite ornament? We get a new ornament every year. And so I think my favorite one has to be the 2020 ornament, which is a Moana dog looking ornament. So it's got to be number one in my heart.
Right. So if you could not tell by the questions and today's date, or probably by when you're listening, it is Christmas week in the NBA. We're going to later in this show preview our Christmas games that we have coming up in about a week. Talk about some other Christmas-oriented stuff. Hopefully, we'll get to some Celtics talk, specifically trades and such. But before we go there, what do you got for me going on over there, Steve?
I just want to say something to the audience.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
Yes, absolutely.
What's that from? Do you know?
I know what it's from, but I don't know what it's from. Is that from Home Alone?
Yes, it is. Where
he's playing it to the bandits who's waiting outside to make sure he's an adult, even though he's not an adult.
Great Christmas movie.
Before we dive into the Christmas talk and the Celtics talk, I wanted to give a weekly highlight rundown, a quick rapid fire. There's been a lot that has happened in the NBA landscape over the past week since we talked last Sunday. COVID is running rampant across the league. We're not going to touch on it like crazy. There's probably been, 7 games at this point that have been postponed. Players are out left and right. It's going to be an issue moving forward. Devontae Graham hit a 60-foot buzzer beater. The Grizzlies continue to be on a tear without Ja Morant. Jaylen Brown returned for the Boston Celtics in the best win of the season against Milwaukee Bucks. Steph, congratulations. Best shooter of all time, is now officially landmarked as the number 1 three-point shooter of all time, passing Ray Allen against what game did he do against Philly? No, against MSG.
Yeah.
It was in MSG.
Against MSG.
Durant continues to really bolster an MVP campaign, single-handedly winning a game in overtime against Toronto. He beat the 76ers and some other teams without either of his other cohorts. Speaking of which, we got word that Kyrie Irving would be making his return to the basketball court. In similar aspect, other exiled point guards made their returns. Kemba Walker, Isaiah Thomas, back on the hardwood for the Lakers now for Isaiah, and for the Knicks for Kemba. Both had strong showings in their first game back in a while. Danny Ainge back in the NBA. Not a huge surprise, but he got hired to the Utah Jazz. He's back in business. Happy for him that things are going good. Jonathan Kuminga's career high start, 26-point game, was spoiled by the return of OG Anunoby and a fully healthy Raptors game, but that was a great showing. And a little Cade check-in. He's averaging 22, 7, and 7 since we last talked on 47, 43, and 78 shooting. He's been out of control, a highlight machine, everything we want to see. What stuck out this week before we jump into Christmas music and Christmas talk? Biddies.
I think we have to just take another moment to revisit Steph breaking the record. I think it was just a cool moment to have in the league. I think there's so much negativity, pessimism around how players are in the modern game. I think it was nice to just have that moment to celebrate Steph, to celebrate everything that he's accomplished and really achieve so much more than anybody thought when he first entered the league. So shout out to Steph. I really enjoyed the love fest that came on to him this week.
It was pretty funny it seemed like a love fest from everyone except for Ray Allen. Really seemed a little dejected. Like, what did he expect? I don't understand. He's still one of the greatest shooters ever. He just really didn't. He didn't seem that happy for Steph. It was unusual. But yes, I agree. The celebration of Steph Curry. How old is he now? 33. He's going to obliterate that record. I'm sure that there's going to be other players that come into the league moving forward because of the trend that he started of shooting that'll come close and probably surpass Ray Allen and the other shooters of Christmas past. But I think it's safe to say, unless there's some catastrophic injury, Steph will probably be on top of that leaderboard specifically for a long, long time. Steve, anything stand out to you in the NBA this past week?
Absolutely. I mean, my Orlando Magic, big winning streak of one game. Very proud of them.
Huge.
They beat the Nets with Patty Mills running the thing for them. So that was good.
The David Duke led Nets.
Absolutely. I don't know. I know you don't want to talk Kyrie Irving, but it just shows what happened with him, that the Nets organization is a complete fraud and they have no character whatsoever.
They did fold to Kyrie a little bit quicker than I was expecting, but I'm not surprised. We talked about last week about how likely it would be that he would be returning. I think that he won't be vaccinated for the regular season, but I bet you that he does some type of weird vaccination thing come postseason so that he can actually play in every game and not just be a part-time player, which is very peculiar. With that said, let's jump into our Xmas preview. Christmas Eve is 5 days away on Friday. And then after that, depending on how the landscape of the league looks, a lot of people calling for a postponement or a league pause. We'll see. I think a lot of executives and Adam Silver alike would be trying really hard to really forego any pausing of the league until after their most important day of the season. On Christmas Day, we have Atlanta at New York, Boston, Milwaukee, Golden State, Phoenix, Brooklyn, LA, Lakers. And then the night is closed off with a nightcap of Luka and the Mavs at the Utah Jazz. Before we get to our Ebenezer Scrooge, a Christmas story or a Christmas carol, or I forget what the movie is called, even though I asked before we started recording, talking about some of our favorite Christmas memories and what to look forward in the future, albeit that right now, Kevin Durant, Kyrie, Harden, Trae Young, who else is out for this stuff? Devin Booker said he's going to play, but it's not from COVID. There's a lot of people that are either resting or out. Giannis is in the protocol. Davis. Anthony Davis, well, he's hurt.
Yeah.
Hopefully getting as many players as active as possible. Which game on Christmas Day are you most excited to watch?
There's only one, really. I mean, I know you guys are huge Celtics fans, and you're going to be all about Celtics Bucks, but I'm looking at the slate, and the only game that interests me right now is Warriors Suns. It's the two best teams in the West, and both of them are pretty healthy. You're going to see a really good matchup. The first two games they played were decided within 5 points. So I'm super excited to watch that game, and it's in the prime time, 5 o'clock Eastern time. So just after you're like eating Christmas dinner or maybe right before. But yeah, I mean, no Trae Young, bummer. No Giannis, probably bummer. I mean, every other game is missing a stud player, and I know
we don't know. We don't know. We can assume that those guys are going to be out, but we don't know. There could be some weird finagling where Trae comes back. He does 3 negative tests before Saturday. It's a week away. It seems that if players and superstars want to navigate around playing in a specific game so far in this season, it seems like they've been able to do so. So I don't want to rule anyone out ahead of time, but yes, right now it's suspect whether or not they would be playing.
By the way, before Biddies gets in, I can't even watch the games anymore. YouTube TV just boned me with NBA on ABC. I just watched ABC and ESPN this weekend, so no NBA and Christmas for me. Way to be a Scrooge, Disney.
Cole and Disney stocking.
You need a different provider. That shouldn't be your only provider. You need a different source of basketball besides YouTube TV.
Well, I have the league pass, but you know how that goes. Half the games are blacked out, so who knows?
I do agree that Golden State, Phoenix, the clear 2 best teams in the league so far that we've seen this season, is the marquee matchup of the day. It's why they're at the time slot they're at. If not, the 7 p.m. time slot. Is that when the Nets Lakers is supposed to tip?
Yeah.
Those are the two prime time slots of Christmas Day. They always get the most marquee matchups. The first two matchups between the teams, Phoenix had a big win when they first played. And apologies. The Warriors had a big win when they played first, and then Phoenix beat them the following night. I forget what the order was. One team won by like 20 something, and the other team won by 8, but they split their first couple matchups.
Yeah, I think Phoenix won the first one because they extended the win streak.
Right. That's exactly it. I know that you have thoughts on the Warriors biddies. Last night they rested all their main guys, or maybe that was 2 nights ago, and we saw a career best game from Jonathan Kuminga. How do you see this season shaking out, I guess, in the framework of this Christmas game where they're going to be playing against one of their most fortuitous opponents? How do you see what they have, the recipe that they have of guys? Do you think the injection of Clay is enough and they won't need to do any changes? Or are you expecting some type of cashing in of assets for their stretch run for hopefully another championship fight?
Yeah. So I was hoping to come on last week and had a little COVID booster hangover. So I had a lot to say about the Warriors, but where they stand now and what you'll hear Zach Lowe point to when considering whether or not the Warriors will make a trade is that they do see themselves as a Spurs 2.0, and that's why they're going to stand pat at the trade deadline. They have these young pieces that they want to be the next generation. And in that Spurs 2.0 vein, I think this is kind of a Spursy year for them to win a title, where when you look at the 5 titles that Duncan won, one of them during the lockout season in 99, and then 2 of them are 05 and 07, and that's between the window of the Kobe Shaq dynasty and when the Lakers and Celtics traded themselves back into title contention and really were the precursor to all the player movement that we see now. And I think that this season has that sort of feel to it where the Lakers have very much underperformed. They were supposed to be the second favorite. The Nets have been very wacky with not only the Kyrie situation, which has evolved this week, but we also don't have the James Harden MVP that we thought we did when we were saying the Nets would definitely be runaway favorites. And so it's just been a weird season, and I think it's an opportunity for the Warriors to pick up another ring and really bolster those 3 guys, that front office, Steve Kerr as a head coach, but bolster the legacy.
So I know, Sheamus, you made the same kind of point last week where you like what the Warriors are doing, where they're holding their young assets potentially and building this next generation. I pushed back on that idea, and I kind of want your thoughts, Biddies. Like when you describe what happened with the Spurs and having that long stretch out dynasty, because they brought in Tim Duncan, he kind of carried that second wave, and then Kawhi was supposed to be the third wave of like just continual success. I mean, unless the Golden State Warriors see one of these young prospects, Wiseman or Kuminga, as the next star of the league where they can carry their dynasty, I just think they might be making a mistake by trying to extend this thing out longer versus cash in the chips now and guarantee you a championship the next year or 2.
Yeah, I think you're right. If the guy was there who was the real guarantee us a championship piece, I just don't know if Domantas Sabonis is going to be the guy that is going to push them. How much of a difference is he going to make where they are already in a really strong position? And I think Domantas Sabonis is a very good player. I just don't know if he's the kind of guy that is going to make the difference. And if that player, if a big time difference maker does become available, I don't know how they fit onto Golden State. I don't know who the person is that my dream Golden State addition is, but I'm not opposed to them making a trade. I don't think it will present itself for them to pull the trigger.
Right. I guess it all also depends on what happens before you get in Sheamus. What happens with Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, because those two have really, I mean, I know you're making faces, but like those guys have really overperformed of what you expected of them. And if they can continue to play at this level, they might not have to add another piece. But if they start to revert back to the mean, you might want to get Steph a little bit of help, especially in the second unit.
To me, the only like wiggle room where I could see them making a change is because I do think they're going to err on the side of staying pat, just because of what you said, Biddies, and from what we've heard from them of targeting a Spurs style longevity. It's extended. There's chemistry that's built throughout. Spurs never made regular season trades. Why would we? And I think that once Clay comes back, we're hearing now that the hope and dream was that he was going to be back for Christmas or one of the couple games beforehand. But we're hearing now that it's more likely they're going to hold him out a little bit longer than maybe he needs, and just to be safe and bring him back in the middle of January. But when he comes back, it's kind of going to slot a lot of the guys right now who are filling shoes in a surprising manner. Like you say, Steve, Jordan Poole is going to be able to turn back into a bench scorer, and he's going to be one of the better guys in that role in the league. And the sugar on top guys now are going to be just more, not expendable, but their contributions aren't going to be as pertinent to the team's success. And they're not going to live and die by Gary Payton and Juan Toscano Anderson and guys like that succeeding, because they're going to have the namestay headlining guys actually playing minutes. And this is all, I mean, it doesn't mean anything if Clay comes back and he's only 50% Clay. He has to be at least 80, 85% Clay. But the one piece where I see a possibility for an upgrade is with Wiseman. And it's just because that Wiseman skill set, that run and lob threat, but also being a big who wants to be a scorer with a ball in his hands, that's never been the athletic center. That's never been a player that the Golden State or, again, the San Antonio Spurs have modeled their schemes on either ends of the ball after. Like his skill set and his archetype isn't one that we're used to seeing from a Steve Kerr successful playoff basketball team. And because of the he's very mistake prone. He's a bad decision maker, and the offense doesn't flow as nice. And for a team who's more about flow than probably any other team in the entire league, I can see him once he comes back, and he's also supposed to be coming back in, I think, a little bit later, late January, early February. I wouldn't be surprised if when he came in, things looked clunky, and if we're only seeing 12-minute a game, 10-minute a game, James Wiseman, and he's clearly healthy, why wouldn't they cash in that chip that would have premier value for another franchise, bolster a championship run, a championship roster as is, in this situation where there's a clear window for them to be able to grasp it? And it doesn't need to be for a player that's on his way out of the league. Like, they could easily get Pascal Siakam for James Wiseman package. And I don't think that, and they can do what they want to do anyway. They can continue on this, we're bridging the future, we're not giving up our young assets. Well, that's fine. Keep Kuminga and Moody, because those guys actually fit in. They match the archetypal offense that they want to play and the style of defense that they want to play. And Kuminga, even though he makes you scratch your head sometimes, he's not as mistake prone in the way that is an issue for the Warriors offense, and definitely not as an issue for the Warriors defense. Like, Wiseman's like a very, very high foul player. Like, he's like making mistakes defensively, and he's abruptly stopping things defensively. Kuminga has been reserved defensively, and he's fit in. He doesn't have a ton of issues in terms of where he goes and his spacing offensively. It's just kind of like, oh, he shot there, so Kerr benched him because he doesn't want Kuminga to be shooting right now. So I think that what we're seeing from the Warriors is a definite championship run. And I think we're going to continue to see, depending on how they approach specifically the return of their key players, their marquee players in Clay and Wiseman, what their actual vision and how willing they are to commit to a championship run. And I think I'm hoping that they're going to have their full slate of guys. I know that they just rested. It was just rest for the reason for them not playing up in Toronto after a tough win in Boston, where the Celtics really fought back in the second half after struggling the first half. But this matchup on Christmas against Phoenix, where they've split so far in their matchups, I think it's a big game. I kind of wish this matchup, because I think this is the final time they'll be playing each other, I wish it was a little bit later in the season so we could see each team a little bit more finalized in comparison to what we're going to see come postseason. But these are the data points that like really matter when you're coming into the postseason. The regular season's over. What games do I look back on that matter for what we could be seeing in the following 16 games, following 20, 30 games of the playoffs? What we have coming up on Christmas, this is a data point where I'm going to be able to file it and say, did they pull out Kuminga? Is he playing in this matchup? Because he just showed he can be more of an offensive punch than we've seen him be so far. Or is it going to be more of the same? And can they handle the issues that plagued them when they shut down Steph earlier? And I think I would pick the Warriors to win again, but I have no clue. Is Bridges healthy again? Because I know he had a stint where he hurt his ankle, but I don't even know if he missed any games.
Unsure on Bridges.
Yeah. Who do you think wins on Christmas Day? Golden State or Phoenix?
I like Phoenix in the desert.
Wow.
Let's give it a Phoenix.
Home game. It's true.
Why
That
not?
crowd was rocking, you know?
They have a good crowd. They have a good crowd.
I feel like they're like, we're going to talk a little bit about like Christmas memories and just like when Garnett came to the Celtics and we actually got to play on Christmas Day. That was a really cool experience as a fan. It was like, wow, we matter.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing to look up. When was the last time Phoenix played on Christmas Day?
Ooh, I mean, I would have to guess that Steve Nash was not a coach.
While you're looking that up, I did have a fun fact about the Christmas Day games. I'm curious if either one of you two have the answer to this.
Yes.
So of all the NBA franchises, only 2 have never played a Christmas Day game. Do you know the 2 franchises?
Charlotte Hornets.
That is one of them.
Good job, Shay.
It's not the Pelicans because they played them on Christmas.
And I
Zion's rookie year.
I totally screwed up. Can you give me your first answer again? What was it?
The Hornets Bobcats.
Yes, correct. Ding, ding, ding.
Can we get Minnesota?
KG, he had to have games. I think it's got to be another.
A couple of years ago, I believe in 2016, they played the Lakers in the late game.
Oh, the year after Jimmy Butler season?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Eastern Conference or Western Conference team?
It is a Western Conference team.
The Thunder count? No, they played plenty of Christmas games. What am I doing?
Yeah.
What the heck?
They had
They played like a bunch of Christmas games.
Do you want the answer?
Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, because Chris Webber had to have played.
Christmas has been happening every year.
Yeah, Christmas
since the NBA was existing.
It's pretty big.
Year. Christmas happened every year. The NBA happened.
So it's to give you a hint, it's not the most recent franchise, but it's a more recent franchise. So it's not a historic franchise. Well, I guess it's historic, but it's new within the past 20 years or so.
It was an expansion team around the same time as the Hornets, but it's not the Magic, and it's
Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies is a good. Yeah, there it is.
There it is. The Grizzlies or the other franchise.
Go.
No for Christmas games ever.
Wow,
I think
that's surprising.
That might be changing.
I mean, the Celtics have played. I mean, there was a stretch after the KG era before Tatum and Jalen took off where we weren't in there. But before that, the Celtics played on like every single Christmas ever.
They have one of the most played Christmas games, like as far as they've played the most.
Do you have the ranks? I would like to do that. Do you have the ranks? Which teams have played the most?
It's funny. They have the number of wins and number of losses. They don't have total games, which is unfortunate.
It's a lot of math.
This is why I don't donate to Wikipedia.
I'm not going to make you do math.
I do have some with the most. I mean, this one has to be the most. Is the LA Lakers?
Yeah,
24
for sure.
and 23 losses, which brings them to 47 total Christmas Day games.
Yeah, and you got to think Celtics are 2, and you got to think other historical teams are out
The
there.
Knicks.
Number 2 is the Knicks.
Because the Knicks can get in when they're bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Phoenix Suns played in 2009, 2010, but they haven't had a Christmas game since then. So we'll see if they can really become a mainstay in this Christmas conversation. After those guys, I think, as we said, the other headlining matchup is the Brooklyn Nets versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, this is a little bit restricted and limited of a showing for what we're going to get from these guys. It's uncertain to know whether we're going to see Kevin Durant, Harden, or Kyrie at this point. We know we're not going to see Anthony Davis, but LeBron and Russell Westbrook will likely be in attendance. Isaiah Thomas will likely be in attendance. Kevin Durant's corona thing is really weird. Like, he tested positive, and then he came out of COVID protocols, and he played for a week, and then he got another positive. He really confuses me. I bet you he plays, and I bet you Kyrie doesn't play, and I bet you Harden, I don't know. But if we get some facsimile of a full game and it's not Kessler Edwards versus Malik Monk, do you think there's anything to glean off this matchup at all? Or is it just like, throw your hands in the air, this is a COVID bubble and nothing matters whatsoever?
I would be more inclined to say the second one. Even if they had everyone there, we would see that the Lakers are bad. We already knew that. So I don't know what else we take from it. It's a funny matchup because on paper before the season, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing. And when we finally got to Christmas, we're like, I don't really care about this game too much.
Yeah, I think like the only hope is that maybe LeBron just really throws it into extra gear, knows that the whole world is watching, and really wants to go out and win one and pushes himself to a level that he typically reserves for the playoffs.
That's fair. I mean, LeBron can turn it on.
LeBron always has, like, we're going to talk about our favorite Christmas memories, but going back, the easiest things for me to remember going back across every Christmas are always like LeBron highlights. Like, I feel like just thinking about LeBron dunks and LeBron shots and plays that he's made, he always makes a point to be in the headlines the next couple weeks after the Christmas day. So I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up, had a big performance. Hopefully it's opposing Kevin Durant and not opposing David Duke Jr. As far as the other matchups go,
Shout out to Providence.
David Duke Jr. Really, you don't change your name to being Dave, just Dave Duke.
It's sad. It's sad.
I think we had this conversation during a draft prep last year.
He did say in his draft interviews, he said, I'm going to make people remember David Duke as the basketball player.
All right.
Said, oh my gosh, you're going to have to be really good.
Imagine if there's just like a white supremacist out there named Michael Jordan.
It reminds me of the Dave Chappelle skit.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So the other three matchups, I'm not super interested in the Dallas and Utah bout. Dallas has been one of the more confusing teams in the league. Luka continues to play himself into shape 2 months into the season. The Utah Jazz, with their new CEO at the helm, are probably going to be more of the same. Atlanta, New York is going to be the snooze fest of the day, especially if Trae Young isn't there. If he plays,
there's going to be something fun about just like kids are opening presents, and in the background you just hear Trae is balding. Like I do want that MSG versus Trae Young energy going.
No offense to the New York Knicks and their fans, of which we have many in our friend group, but I just don't. I find them one of the most boring teams to watch this year. The regression from Julius Randle, the struggling output from their former Celtics backcourt in Kemba, even though he had a nice game against the Celtics, and Evan Fournier, it's just really hard to watch. And all the other pieces have just sputtered. Like Mitchell Robinson hasn't taken a step forward that we would hope. Nerlens Noel is what he is. He's a bench rim protector. RJ Barrett started off on fire the first 5 games in the season. Since then, he's been terrible. I don't think there's any rhythm or flow. You can tell that Tibbs is extremely frustrated with that roster, but I'm not interested in that game. So before we talk about our favorite Christmas memories and what we look forward to in Christmas future, the Boston-Milwaukee matchup, Obviously, we're coming off of the Celtics had a tough loss against the Warriors on Friday night, and they had a nice win against New York on Saturday night. But the best win of the season and the most notable game was in Jalen's first game back, as I said previously, at home versus the Milwaukee Bucks. They didn't have their full slate of guys, and Middleton left the game in the fourth quarter. What was the injury? Do we know his health moving forward?
I do not know, but I can look it up as we discuss this. I'll be right back.
Yes, and Drew Holiday played. It was one of the first games where those guys were in the lineup and they lost for the entire season. Usually when those three guys are playing, the Milwaukee Bucks are gangbusters. But what we saw was a Boston Celtics onslaught with playmaking from the Jays, with ball movement, with a lot of fluidity offensively, and with the game-breaking defense that we've really been hoping for this team to bring to the scene. Middleton injury update.
Hyperextended knee. He has missed the last 3 games, been probable the last 2.
Okay. So maybe we'll see him on Christmas. It's a week away. I would say he probably plays. As a matchup that I could potentially see being a first-round matchup where Milwaukee Bucks are either the 2 or the 3, where the Celtics are either probably the 6 or the 7. We'll see what shakes out. Celtics could be higher or lower, depending on how their fortunes change on the trade market, which we'll touch on in a little bit. What is there to glean off this next matchup, and how excited were you, and what was there to be drawn off that victory on Monday night a couple days back?
Videos, I'll let you take that, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what excited me most was that Milwaukee was up early and we actually kicked it into gear and played with some toughness against a team that has been better than us all season. I think that a lot of the frustration with the Celtics is that the team does not have the discipline to play clean basketball for 4 quarters. So even though one of the quarters was wasted going down by 9 after the first, I like that we were able to just have mental toughness that is not a constant on this team and fight back against Milwaukee. And then Tatum obviously exploded. I think was at 42 points. And yeah, I like 42-point performances in Celtics wins. So I think all that was I was feeling great about on Monday in terms of what can we take from this Christmas Day matchup or the 2 matchups in pretty short order. I think if the Celtics continue to be up, down, then nothing, because if that's the case, then they're not going to do anything in the playoffs. Especially against a defending champion. But if they can use it as a springboard to make a run and maybe even put themselves in the 4-5 conversation, because they certainly had higher expectations to start the season than a team like Chicago or Cleveland, then yeah, I can get excited about it. But for now, like, if the Celtics win on Wednesday, then I'll probably expect against Cleveland, then I'll probably expect them to lose on Christmas Day, because that's just been the season.
Yeah. Well, Cleveland is one of the most ransacked and obliterated COVID teams in the entire NBA right now. And there's something to be said about the Celtics taking their bullets in the face from COVID last year and now being able to be one of the teams that's hopefully going to be able to dodge the protocols more than some of the other rosters. I'm knocking on wood as I say this, but what we're seeing from them, and I would like to reiterate a point I made last week, Jason Tatum has made a legitimate leap as a playmaker. His passing and his playmaking, his vision, his ability to draw the defense and to see where the pass needs to go and to lead his teammates with his passes has been fantastic in these past 5 games. And it's been a good microcosm of what has been growth in general across the entire season. I think the urge to talk about our top 2 superstars lacking that gene, that playmaking ability, and their inability to play together and to mesh, I think that's a really, really lazy perspective. And I think that that's something that's old, and I don't think that that's taking into account what has happened this season at all. And I think the beginning of the year, it was just Tatum can't hit a shot. Everything else is great. And what we've seen in the past 10, 15 games is he's hitting his shots. So now he looks like the top 10 guy. He's in the discussion for he could be a top 7 player at the end of the year. He's in a conversation not now previously with is he as good as Bradley Beal and Jimmy Butler and Paul George. Now is he as good as or is he better than Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid? And the more extended success that we see from Tatum in the way that he's been succeeding so far is more positive things for the Celtics in the future. And that pairs really, really well with what we've seen from Jaylen. And I don't understand the discussion on Jaylen Brown. I think it's one of the most frustrating topics in general across the league. I think he continually is underrated by consensus as a player who people forget grows exponentially every offseason as a player. Even the fact that he was out with injury for most of this previous offseason with his wrist, he has come back as a player who, as well, looks to be more capable of making the easy read, making a cross-court kick out, making some nice passes in transition. And yes, obviously both of these guys still have situations where they'll get blinders on and they see a shot that they like, but that's okay if you're a 25 point per game scorer in the NBA and you have no shooters on your roster.
And
so the thought process that these guys can't play make and they can't fit together, I think is outright wrong. And I think the issue for the Celtics is there's not enough shooting on the roster.
right.
I would like another playmaker. And I think that Marcus Smart is perfectly fine at it. He's a great passer too. He's not a great necessarily decision maker or a ball handler. And in terms of a pick and roll creator, he's not elite, which is why I love. I'm obsessed with the offensive sets with Smart at the nail, Tatum on the wing, Bo in the dunker spot, whatever the heck the other guy in the lineup is, weak side, and Jaylen as the initiator. Specifically against the Bucks, and we saw it in games in moments against both the Knicks and the Warriors. When Jaylen brought the ball up in those situations and played through Smart and then brought the ball out, there was so much movement, both of players and of the ball, and the shot diet that the team was getting was exactly the type of shot chart that Ime has been preaching and that analytically you want to be looking at your heat map and seeing versus what we have struggled with when the team looks clunky and weird and you're seeing 18-foot jump shots. The Celtics continue to be one of the best teams in the league at defending Giannis when they have their full roster. They can build a wall with their defenders, Al Horford and Grant Williams and Robert Williams. That triumvirate of bigs working together is really worked fantastic. You can only slow him down. Obviously, you can't stop him completely. He's one of the best 3 players in the league. But that's another layer entirely because those guys right now, not Rob Williams, are in COVID protocols. So if we don't have Al or Grant Williams on Christmas Day, I think it's going to be difficult to get a win, specifically because of how valuable they are defensively against that exact team. But I think employing more of the same things we saw offensively from the first matchup and that we've seen in general since Jaylen has returned to the teams, coming back off his hamstring, and that Tatum has been trying to play, I think there's no reason we can't beat them in a 7-game series if everyone is healthy. I wouldn't pick them right now. The Celtics are a worse team than the Milwaukee Bucks, obviously. But I think this thing is there. And you're absolutely right where this team is a roller coaster. It's up and down, and that's all we've seen. And you said you're taking nothing away if you continue to see the same roller coaster up and down. I think my takeaway is continued up and down means there's definitely a shakeup trade. And no, it's not Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's going nowhere. But I do think it makes it more and more likely that Marcus Smart gets moved.
And Jay,
yeah.
Just a point I wanted to add about the Jaylen Brown skeptics, the Brown Tatum skeptics, is that the trades that those people on Twitter were calling for this offseason were for Bradley Beal or for Damian Lillard. And we would be kicking ourselves with the production and the way that those two players have looked this year, even with the Brown injuries. I just still love having the time of Jaylen Brown. So I just the skeptics, I think they just are into the soap opera of the NBA and are impatient with a 23-year-old and 24-year-old or 24-year-old and 25-year-old combo that still has maturing to do, but also might not be that far away.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, you can.
I know you guys love the Celtics, and you always have this constant optimism that things will get better. We're just at the turning point, and we've been saying this for 2 years now. Like, I'm looking at some of the numbers, and they are what we thought they were, as the old Cardinals coach would say. Defensive rating 12th, offensive 20th. Hold on, let me finish. Net rating 14th, and if you look at their point differential, they're about 14th. They're exactly, their numbers suggest they are exactly what they are, as 6, 7, 8 seed, unless they do something drastic. And they're going to keep throwing out Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I don't see what is going to change. I don't understand like where this turning point is. Like, you always say, oh, like this guy's looking better. Grant Williams is improving. Tatum's a better passer. We say all these things, but yet the outcome is the same week after week after week after week. Like, I just don't see why we're being optimistic about this.
We're being optimistic because when Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and Robert Williams are on the court, they perform like they're the best team in the league. They have a better four-man net rating than almost any other four-man net rating across the entire NBA. If you look at the minutes that they've played since last season, when they were awful, like they were like a nightmare to watch, including last season, they're still one of the best four-man lineups. If you take out Marcus Smart, that three-man lineup, Tatum, Jaylen, Robert Williams, that's like the best three-man lineup in the NBA. When these guys are on the court together, they play good basketball. It's finding the right recipe around them and having health. Jaylen Brown hasn't played around half of the games. If you told me that he hasn't played around half of the games, I would say they probably have a pretty middling record if we're only 30 games into the season. They're probably somewhere between the 7 and the 10 seed, where there's not much disparity between the 4 seed and the 10 seed. And that's exactly where they are. Yes, there's frustrating situations. Yes, I'm extremely frustrated with the lack of growth shooting-wise from Aaron Naismith, but I'm more frustrated by the uproar that this team gets when they underperform expectations of a full health team when they're not at full health, or they underperform expectations for players that aren't being put in the best situations to succeed. I'm very grateful for players like Grant Williams and Josh Richardson, who are having, Grant Williams more so, career best year. Josh Richardson, probably his best year since he played for the Miami Heat. Grant Williams, I could get down to keep around. What do you want to say about those two guys?
Right. No, it's not those guys. I get the point. Like, when you have your core four, they're all there and they're all performing. This team is fantastic. They're fun to watch. They're explosive. They're great. But that's just like saying, wow, if Kawhi Leonard was always there for the Clippers, they would be great. Like, we know what Jaylen Brown is. He's a great player, but he's often injured. Same thing with Robert Williams. So to just think that it's just going to work out and no one's going to get hurt in the playoffs, or when you get there, everything's going to be fine, like, it's just not a realistic expectation.
I think it's all about expectation management and understanding as the regular season progresses. Like, my most frustrating aspect of the year was, I forget which specific game it was, but was when we brought Jaylen back clearly 2 games too early. And he didn't look himself. It was against Philadelphia. And he had bursts of looking great, but it was clear that he shouldn't be out there. And that's not the right approach. The right approach is what they're doing with Robert Williams, who the first week of the season was playing like 32 minutes a game. And you were like, wow, this is great. He can do this. And then he fell awkwardly. And since then, I don't think he missed much time, but since then he's been down closer to like 23, 24 minutes a game. Clearly they're managing him for the long haul. They want him to be extended so that he can be as effective and potent as possible come the postseason. So it's all about managing both your expectations for what the roster could be and understanding what they are in the current moment isn't their actualized final product. It's what they're trying to make their actualized final product come May and June, because that's what time matters most. So what they're doing right now, I think in a macro perspective, I think it makes sense. I trust Brad to have the right vision. I trust what Ime says. I trust his connection with the players. There's things I've seen from Ime that I don't love, but I think overall he's been solid. I think you're hoping you see continued growth from your two pillar superstars, which we have. You hope that you get some monicum of health from players like Robert Williams, which I understand is a fool's errand at moments, but this year has been his most consistent stretch, I'll knock on wood again, of health that he's had so far in the NBA. I think when he is 100% healthy, and if he's playing 31, 32 minutes a game, he's probably one of the 60 most valuable players in the league. So to me, what we see for the Celtics and what we see on Christmas, hopefully, is another output of good effort, because I understand that it's hard for them to have consistent effort when they're missing guys and when things are going wrong. But I'm hoping that they can really come at Giannis and the Bucks' neck again. And I think another win would be huge for the team's morale moving forward and would hopefully lead them in the right direction. But I think a loss to the depleted Sixers on Monday or a loss to the Cavs on Wednesday, that could be what we see being the stepping stones for likely a trade on the fringe of the roster or to one of the namestays like Marcus Smart or even Al Horford. Who you guys got? Bucks, Celtics, Christmas Day.
Gotta go Celtics.
You know
Steve.
who I got. You don't have to ask me.
Such a cynic.
Bucks.
Okay, we're going to spin this convo. We just did our Christmas present, a little breakdown. Hopefully we get full health from our players. Who knows? Next Sunday, we could be talking about the league pause, and they're not going to be coming back to mid-January. Who knows? But with that said, let's get to Christmas past. And talk about some of our favorite memories from the NBA in Christmas history. My initial things, I don't know why, the first thing that I think of when I think of NBA Christmas is the CGI'd commercial where they're all on the three-point line with a ball rack.
Oh, wait.
And they make the jingle by making shots, and then it ends with LeBron dunking at the end of it. That's the first thing I think of when I think of
excellent memory.
That was fake.
It was incredible. My favorite part about it is that Derrick Rose is one of the shooters, and he's just like awful, and it's just like I can't believe. But the best thing visually watching it is the guys on the edges of the frame, and their shots are just going straight, but the ball is just going veering far left and veering far right.
I think that and Pitbull is going down. Timber playoffs are my two favorite NBA commercials of all
I
time.
love that one.
But my favorite, I mean, this was I put this into the agenda just so I could talk about one thing. And 04, I think 04, maybe 05. Kobe versus Shaq. First time they were playing against each other. I think we've become so used to the player movement. We've become so used to the drama. But man, Kobe versus Shaq was monumental in terms of that feud and that dynasty ending. And then they come and meet. Shaq fouls out on a foul on Kobe. They go in OT. D-Wade saves the Heat, and Kobe gets a shot at the buzzer, and it doesn't go in. And it was peak NBA soap opera before the decision kind of made the world into a crazy place.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
I don't have like a particular memory to go back on because Biddies, that was fantastic, man. I can't top you. But I remember just like a couple years back, the golden days of Christmas NBA action, where the previous year we watched these amazing finals between the Cavs and Warriors. LeBron, Steph, they hated each other. They had the whole thing where they had the Christmas. What type of party was it that LeBron
Cookies.
had
I
with
think they were actually Halloween.
Halloween, right? And they were making fun of Steph.
That was a big topic on Christmas Day for sure.
But yeah, dude, back to back, three Christmases in a row, prime time slot, the Cavs and Warriors, man. Those games were never boring. They were always fun. So I love those games.
Must see TV.
One of them, I forget which one, was that awesome Kyrie fade over Klay Thompson from like the mid post buzzer beater. That was great. Why don't they do Christmas jerseys anymore? They were always like really bad, but I always loved that they did jerseys specifically for Christmas Day. And I definitely miss those. I feel like they stopped doing them maybe in 2017. I feel like when LeBron went back to the Cavs his last time is when they stopped doing them. But
IT was definitely wearing a Christmas Day jersey.
IT had a Christmas jersey for sure.
Christmas Day ones. It was a smart move because you could sell more jerseys. But now you got me thinking, whatever happened to those sleeve jerseys? Are those gone now?
Those are gone.
Yeah, LeBron just said we don't want them anymore, so they stopped making them. I said earlier how a lot of my Christmas moments were just thinking of LeBron. I think it was against the Lakers when he was still on the Heat, and I think they had sleeved jerseys. But it was the first quarter, and it was like back-to-back possessions where it was a defensive lockdown and back-to-back alley-oops off the backboard from Dwayne Wade. Sick dunks. One of them was like left-handed. He shouldn't even be able to caught it. He jumped off the wrong foot. It was ridiculous. And the other one was like over some guy. That stands out. I wish that I had a better memory of, because as we were saying, the Celtics have played so many times. I wish I had a better memory of some of the Celtics matchups in Christmas Day, but more often than not,
I feel like
they were like blowouts. Like
I feel like we kind of stink on Christmas Day, or we play the Knicks and get an easy win.
Yeah.
I wrote down a specific one that I remember that was really good. It was in 2009. It was 1918-19. The Celtics versus the 76ers went to overtime. It was right after that bitter postseason matchup.
Yeah,
that was a great one.
I remember that one. That's a good game.
I
feel like we played.
Kyrie had a great game.
Yeah, there was a stretch where we played like the Brooklyn Nets or the Washington Wizards for like 4 years in a row, and I just remember them like never being that great of a game.
We were just like good enough. Like we were just good enough, and we were on the East Coast, so they put us in with like a big market team.
Yeah,
I do remember that game actually in 19 specifically is when Horford shut down Embiid that game. He had a really good game against Embiid, and everyone was like, Horford is now the Embiid stopper. Like they crowned him like he's the one that can stop Embiid. He's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why Philly signed him the following offseason.
Definitely stopped them from the internal.
It's incredible. All right, that's enough for Christmas past. As far as Christmas future goes, I mean, I don't think we have technically this Christmas is Christmas future. Do you have an idea for what Christmas future entails, Steve? Okay, give me something.
Let me hear.
So Christmas Day games are not, or they're either about two things. Number one, about historic rivalries. So like the Celtics, Lakers, the Celtics, Knicks, historic rivalries or storylines. I want a big storyline game next year. Wherever Ben Simmons ends up, I want that team versus 76ers.
Yes.
Wait, even better, in Philly.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
I want it to be his first game back in Philly and just
That's a good wish.
Okay.
That's a good Christmas wish.
That's a great one.
Biddies, do you have a Christmas future?
I mean, just like speaking of storylines, I think it'll be fun for there to be whatever the first time it is that like Luka is walking in with the title belt around his waist. I think that will be fun. I hope it's, in one of the marquee matchups, like, whatever the big market teams is hot at the time. Maybe the Mavs Clippers rivalry will still be going strong, and just Luka to walk in as the man on Christmas Day and kind of have all eyes on him. I think that'll be fun, and I think he'll shine.
I'm down for that. My obvious choice is I look forward to Cade's first Christmas. It'll be Christmas in my house when Cade is playing on Christmas.
Can you spit take sound in there, Steve?
I'm so upset that I promised Sheamus that I would add the sound to the soundboard. So I said this last podcast, but he came on the We Got Balls podcast, and at the very end when I was trying to close out, all you hear is him sadly say, "I should have talked about Cade more." just like really broken in the heart. So I just wish I had that sound right now.
Did you see that? He was playing 94 feet the first quarter. The opening tip, he's picking up 94 feet. He had a steal and a behind the back assist. It was like the third possession of the game. He's incredible. All right. That's enough for Christmas. Look forward to it. I hope everyone has a great holiday. Lots of cheer and no COVID. Let's close out with the first session of Who Says No? Trade section for the My Wheelhouse Basketball podcast. Yes. Okay. So this one is going to be specifically Celtics themes. I'm going to bring up a trade about which team receives which players. And you guys, if we want to talk about it in greater detail, we can. My goal here was to find some high targets, some mid-range targets, and overall some trades that would likely help the Celtics overall. Do you want to start with a big one, a medium one, or a small one?
Let's go big, baby.
Big. You bet you get it.
What's my biggest one here? Okay, the Atlanta Hawks receive Al Horford and Marcus Smart. The Boston Celtics receive Bogdan Bogdanovic and John Collins. Who says no?
Hawks say no. I think they like John Collins too much.
Yeah, I'm with him. And they just re-signed John Collins, so they have him under contract for a while.
That doesn't mean anything. I think that they could easily talk themselves into they need more defensive backcourt help alongside.
It doesn't change their fortunes.
What about just a Smart for Boggy?
Smart's better than Bogdanovic, but that type of player is someone that I want. I have my favorite trade. I'll save for last. I think it's actually resolvable.
Counter one more real quick. Smart for Boggy. I don't know. You can figure out the money later. Smart for Boggy and Gallinari. There's your shooting. You want your shooting, right?
Maybe. I think that style of trade could be something that the Celtics will be looking for, where they take a downgrade defensively because that can be insulated by the team that they have, and they need more shooting. More of my trades will be including Marcus Smart, and they'll be doing that. Lower tier trade. The Houston Rockets receive the fantastic Josh Richardson, Enes Kanter Freedom, Bruno Fernando, a heavily protected first. The Celtics receive Eric Gordon. Who says no?
I mean, I think the only thing that you would want is a pick out of that. No one wants the other.
Yeah, Houston probably asked for like a couple more like seconds. I think Houston just like tries to pick up some weird picks, and there's some finagling.
Bruno, they need different answers in their front court besides Tice. So to pair with Sengun, maybe a flyer on Bruno could be nice.
Yeah,
I think if you did like a top 18 protected first round pick, I don't know what the market for Eric Gordon is, but I do think it's going to be something similar with a protected first and then a grouping of players. I don't think they're going to get a young asset that's worth anything, but if the Celtics had to include a second rounder in that, I think that would be the type of deal that Houston's looking for, and Eric Gordon would be a real infusion that the Celtics could use.
I do want to say, though, I don't know if this is the correct thought, but my opinion is that the trade market will heavily favor sellers this year because there's so much parity in the league that there's going to be so many less sellers than normal and way more buyers. So you might have to pay a little extra to get a guy like Eric Gordon this year.
And the Minnesotas and the Sacramentos of the world are so motivated to just even get the 10 seed. That'll be popping bottles in the front office.
Yeah.
I have a weird thought process macro level on just the phrase and organizing of teams into buyers and sellers. I often find that neither of those monikers correctly describe anything that's happening. A team that's a buyer is more often than not selling like good stuff. And a team that's a seller, like very infrequently is selling just for draft picks. You know what I mean? So like for one to exist in the actual true definition of what people expect a buyer and seller to be. And I understand this is just like nitty gritty nonsense, but I feel like the term is wrong. Like there's so many sellers. Okay, that's great. Those sellers are also buyers. Like they're both.
Right. But you're either buying the present or buying the future. So I think there's more teams
but it's both buying. It doesn't matter. Next trade. Who says no? The Charlotte Hornets receive Al Horford, Josh Richardson, and a top 18 protected first-round pick. The Boston Celtics receive Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, Plumlee. Who says no?
The Hornets say no. Elaborate.
Yeah.
They need Horford. Horford's a perfect fit for that roster.
Yeah,
and
but
they want to make
Horford's
the
what,
playoffs.
1 year.
Yeah,
Right now,
I feel like they don't. Yeah, I feel like if they're gonna trade Terry Rozier, they might be able to get like a better long-term asset than Al Horford. So I think the opportunity cost is why the Hornets say no.
The Hornets are such a young, promising squad that they're not going to blow everything for this 1 year when they're probably going to, at best, maybe advance one round in the playoffs.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Okay, the Boston Celtics, you choose. They receive Harrison Barnes or Buddy Hield, one of them, similar contract. And the Kings received Josh Richardson, Jabari Parker, Grant Williams, and a first-round pick.
Kings say no because they're getting better offers.
You know what?
They're getting better offers for those guys.
Everybody needs a Buddy Hield. Everybody needs a shooter. Everybody needs a small ball four.
The Lakers probably have buyer's remorse on not getting Buddy Hield. I will say though, they might want to. If no one wants Buddy Hield though, and the Celtics are in the opportunity, I'm sure the Kings want to get out from under that contract.
Right. I don't see,
but
I could see Harrison Barnes market being a little bit bigger. I don't think Buddy was going to get traded for Kyle Kuzma and KCP. Those guys aren't as good as Grant Williams.
I like those guys.
Grant Williams? Come on.
Those guys aren't good.
Kyle Kuzma's good.
What is Grant?
What
is Grant Williams?
I don't like Grant Williams. He's been incredible. He's an incredibly smart, versatile defensive big who so far has been like a 50-40-90 guy. I don't know how true those numbers are going to be and shake out at the end of the year, but so far he's been an efficient offensive shooter and spacer who's a good decision maker, and defensively he's a versatile guy who can guard three positions. So he's valuable. I think the Celtics should trade him, but we'll see.
If he was that valuable, the Celtics wouldn't have to trade him.
Who says no? Josh Richardson, Cantor, Peyton Pritchard to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Celtics receive Malik Beasley.
Can you repeat that trade?
The Timberwolves receive Josh Richardson, Peyton Pritchard, and Enes Kanter Freedom. The Boston Celtics receive Malik Beasley.
I feel like the Timberwolves say no. The only thing I would want is Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah, I think it's another Minnesota no because I don't think we scratch.
I'm striking out here.
I don't think we scratch enough of an itch for them.
Add draft picks.
Yes, they might say yes.
Yeah. Maybe a 3-team trade. I don't know what the third team is doing in this situation, but
I just feel like some of these pieces, like Enes Freedom, like Josh.
I mean, he's just salary matching. He doesn't matter. The players. Okay, so
yeah. I mean, in these scenarios, it's just Peyton Pritchard from Malik Beasley.
Can we trade Freedom back to Portland because it seems like we're the two teams.
So overall recap for the Boston Celtics: tradable pieces are Marcus Smart, $14 million. Al Horford, $27 million. Next year it's less. Grant Williams, $3 million. Josh Richardson, $12 million. Peyton Pritchard, $2 million. Dennis Schroeder, $6 million. And Enes Kanter, $3 million. And yeah, Juancho Hernan Gomez and stuff like that. They have all their draft picks, and they have 2 second-round picks that belong to other teams that are solid second-round picks. So a lot of these trades are going to need to be like consolidatory trades. It's not going to be breaking off into other pieces, but they're finding the right recipe might just be how many draft picks are they willing to attach to Peyton Pritchard to get someone like XYZ.
You didn't mention like Langford and Nesmith. Like you could package.
I think Langford could move. I don't think Nesmith's value has proven to be good enough. His shots haven't fallen enough where his value would be good around the league. I think he matters more and he's more valuable if the Celtics keep him and hope that he shoots his way out of a slump the same way he did last year, rather than moving off of him before his value is there. If he starts hitting his shots and he looks more like the player he was in the playoffs in the last month of last regular season, then yeah, I could see them trading him. I just think that these other guys, and personally, I would rather keep Nesmith. Nesmith is the type of player, theoretically, that the Celtics want. They want a shooter who's a high-energy guy.
But you're trying to offer these teams guys that have either no potential left or have worked themselves out of the Celtics rotation. Like, if someone wants to rebuild and get young pieces, even if they haven't played well, they're going to want the guys with potential still, like the Nesmith or the Langford, someone that excites you going forward.
I think we'd be willing to give them up. I just don't think that there's a high demand for them.
Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, 2 second-round picks to the San Antonio Spurs for Thaddeus Young.
They do it.
Yeah, I think the Celtics might say no.
I want Thaddeus Young on this roster.
Yeah, I feel like Thad has not been doing a ton down there.
He hasn't been playing. They
playing
haven't
him.
been playing.
Not
him.
playing
So
They don't play him.
yeah,
They
just
want to
Josh
go young.
Richardson.
Al Horford, the Toronto Raptors receive Al Horford, Josh Richardson, Marcus Smart, and a second-round pick. The Boston Celtics receive Pascal Siakam.
I think it's
Well,
another. I think it's another
That's
one where they're just going to get
First
a
round
better
pick.
offer from someone else.
Absolutely.
If they want.
Would you rather have Wiseman and a first than
Yes.
that pass
Yes.
first?
Yeah.
I would too. Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, and a protected first-round pick to the Grizzlies. Boston Celtics receive Kyle Anderson.
Slow mo.
How is it? How many minutes is he getting there in Memphis? Because they're competitive this year. He was
He's a good defender. He probably plays 20 minutes a game, sometimes 30, depending on who's healthy in the rotation.
You're giving them who again?
Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, and a protected pick. Schroeder's an expiring guy who you can extend if you want as a bench guard. Josh Richardson adds another steady defensive two-way wing for a roster that likes those guys.
I think
I was trying to figure.
I think Memphis would be into that. Another thing, just about the Celtics draft picks, we're still learning about Brad Stevens's philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be holding on to those for the event that somebody big becomes available, and then he can form a big three with Tatum, Brown, and then do the Anthony Davis, James Harden draft pick offering of whatever four pick swaps, and so I don't think he's going to do the one. I don't think he's going to attach 1 or 2 picks to get somebody who is what is
the Washington Wizards receive Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Grant Williams, Aaron Nesmith, and 3 first-round picks. The Boston Celtics receive Bradley Beal. Who says no?
I have to go to like a 4th first-round pick.
Yeah,
Like a swap?
I wouldn't. So the
swaps,
the
yeah.
Wizards, I think the Wizards are going to be a really interesting team to follow in the coming weeks. I think they could be a team that if they continue to sputter after their clear paper tiger start, Beal's almost like disinterest, I want to say, when that team was succeeding because he was struggling was peculiar, and his play has continued to sputter as the team has fallen back down to earth and teams have shot back up to the mean and started actually hitting their shots. Their defense wasn't really as reputable as it looked originally. So I think that's a team that really, really easily could tear it down, be a seller, move Kuzma for a first-round pick, move KCP for 2 second-round picks. You know, that they can really cash in a lot of their picks. I mean, a lot of their players for just some future assets and stuff and really retool around something new. So I think Bradley Beal is an interesting player to watch and see what his temperature is on the roster. I think he's more likely to move in season, depending on how the next 2 weeks go, than someone like Damian Lillard is, because I think Lillard is more likely to want to see what the new front office does with this roster. With that being said, the Boston Celtics, the Portland Trailblazers receive Al Horford, Marcus Smart, protected first-round pick, or 2 second-round picks. Boston Celtics receive CJ McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic.
How's his collapse lung doing?
How's his collapse lung doing? Good question. Could be an extremely valuable question.
The training staff might have to say no about that one.
Yeah, man. I don't think the Blazers want that. They'll probably do better with somebody else.
Yeah,
I feel like Smart's better than McCollum. I feel like he's better at basketball and he's a better fit with Lillard.
But can they use McCollum to get Simmons? Like, does Daryl Morey finally give? And I was fishing for Daryl Morey's name earlier. Daryl Morey, what does he want? A difference maker?
Right.
So is CJ McCollum and Larry Nance and a bunch of picks? Is that enough of a difference maker to
I'm
get.
still super attached. I'm super attached, even though I don't think it makes sense from the Philadelphia 76ers perspective. Super attached to Ben Simmons getting swapped to the Timberwolves for some big package that includes Beasley and Russell and all their firsts, and have whatever player you want that's not named Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards. Have Jaden McDaniels, have Jared Vanderbilt, who's had an awesome year. I want that trade so bad, like so bad. I heard on a podcast, who was it? Oh, I feel so bad when I forget people's names when I want to steal the things that they say. Someone said that it was Matt Moore from the Action Network. He's good. He's a good follow. He said that Anthony Edwards is the Damian Lillard to Karl Anthony Towns is LaMarcus Aldridge. And I thought that was such a perfect encapsulation of what those two players' roles were for that franchise. And I think to maximize Edwards moving forward, I think Simmons would be a really good fit. Finally, my favorite Celtics trade is a three-way trade. So follow close. The Indiana Pacers receive Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, Jared Butler, and 3 second-round picks. The Utah Jazz, now run by Danny Ainge,
Old pal,
receive Marcus Smart, Karis LeVert, and a first-round pick. And the Boston Celtics receive Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, TJ Warren, and TJ McConnell. So the Pacers are giving up LeVert, Warren, and McConnell, and are getting Schroeder, Richardson, rookie Jared Butler, and a ton of draft picks. The Utah Jazz are giving up Conley, Ingles, and Jared Butler, and are getting Marcus Smart, LeVert, and a first-round draft pick. And the Boston Celtics are giving up Schroeder, Richardson, Smart, and a good amount of draft picks, and getting Conley, Ingles, Warren, and McConnell.
I think that Indiana needs more future assets for them to get rid of any other guys. I think
they need
future focused.
They need Peyton Pritchard in this trade.
Oh my God! Can you imagine Peyton Pritchard in Indiana? He might be.
They would love him.
He'd be king. He's already pretty big in Boston.
That's a huge oversight on my part. I apologize.
Yeah,
huge oversight. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard should be going to the Indiana Pacers.
I don't know. How many picks do the Celtics give up in that? Because they get a lot. I don't know. I don't think it's even. However it worked out.
They're giving up a first and 3 second-round picks.
I feel like they would get a steal there if that was a trade that they pulled off.
I mean, I think Conley is actually a really, really interesting target. And I think a Conley Smart swap, a trade built around those guys, especially now that Danny's at the helm over there, I think something along those lines could really, really, really answer a lot of the questions that both of these franchises have been thinking about, seeing their postseason pitfalls or struggles in general over the past small sample or big sample of time. I think Marcus Smart insulates Donovan Mitchell and adds the extra defensive layer that they've been needing alongside Rudy Gobert. I think he doesn't mess up anything because the roster is still full of shooters and it's not an issue. And as said previously, he's a good distributor. Donovan Mitchell has improved as a distributor. I think he's a perfect fit for that roster, and he's way more valuable to me than what Mike Conley is. And on the contrary, I think Mike Conley would really be a perfect fit. I think he's exactly what the Boston Celtics need. He's a high IQ veteran, not a bad decision maker, good shooter, okay defender, and he's a good playmaker. And then the rest of the pieces were just Joe Ingles would be a miraculous fit off the bench, or we could start him in a pinch if we need. He's one of the best shooters in the league. He's underrated as a defender. TJ McConnell is kind of just like, we need a backup point guard if we're also trading Schroeder or Pritchard. And I threw in TJ Warren just because they're probably looking to just get a couple second-round picks for Warren come the trade deadline. I think he's a player that's probably going to get moved just because he's an asset that some team is down to just pay a small price for, and they're not going to be bringing back. I think he only has 1 year on his deal. So I think he could be a good bench scorer. I just thought that the framework, I think the Pacers would probably be the team that would need more, purely because they're giving up LeVert, who I don't think is going to garner a ton of attention, but they're giving up a little bit more and they're expecting more so. I think the fit that the Jazz are getting and the upside of what could come potentially with LeVert, I think the Jazz would be down. So looking at the deal, I think the Pacers would be the team that would say no, but that type of framework in a trade where the Celtics can upgrade in terms of shooting and in terms of decision making and not lose exponentially in terms of defense, I think that that's the team that they should target. And I really could see, not especially now that Danny's there, I could see that being a partner, and I could see a Conley Smart framework deal really working.
What did Marcus Smart do to you?
I love Marcus Smart. I'm just thinking,
trying to trade him.
no, I just, when I'm thinking about the team, and Biddy's brought it up, the roller coaster thought process, the thing where we need to maximize the Jays and everything around them needs to make sense. And I think there's a lot to be said where this team doesn't have a lot of appealing pieces that aren't Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The player that has the most value outside those guys is Marcus Smart. He's one of the 5 best defenders in the NBA. He's a good passer. He's an average decision maker. He has streaks where he's a fun shooter, but more often than not, he's going to frustrate you in that aspect. But he has a ton of value to a playoff roster that's trying to take the next step to being a real contender. And I think I love him, and I think the team can be a championship team if something else happens. But I just think that he seems to be the obvious chess piece that's going to move, that could help this team get to the next level. I don't want the team to trade Robert Williams because I think he fits too perfectly, and I don't think his value is as high around the league. I don't think Al Horford's value is as high, and I think I'm down to trade Al Horford, but it's similar to Robert Williams. He has more value to the Celtics right now. So it's just that the obvious piece to be leaving the Celtics is Smart, and I don't want to get rid of him. I think he can be an awesome piece here, but I do think that there's something to be said about when we had the initial stretch at the start of the season when the team was struggling. One of the thought process that I talked to, I forget whether it was Biddy's or with my Uncle Mike, was about voice and how important voice was in a successful team's locker room and in a playoff roster, and about what the source was of the voice for the Boston Celtics. And in previous years, it was some combination of Marcus Smart and Brad Stevens. And it was obvious that the percentage of that voice that came from Brad Stevens, not necessarily that it was wearing thin, but maybe it was just growing a little stale. And I think that there's something to be said about Marcus Smart right now. What's the voice of the Boston Celtics? I don't really know, and I don't think they know either. And I think that there's an opportunity for players like, probably more so Jaylen than Tatum, but sure, Tatum. I think Horford is probably doing it by necessity, even though he probably doesn't want to do it. And I think Smart thinks he's the voice. And I think at times he can be effective, but there's a lot to be said about when Jaylen and Tatum came into the league as 19-year-old guys, as underdeveloped guys. Marcus Smart was there. And Marcus Smart, when they got to the roster, Marcus Smart was the longest tenured Celtic on the team, and he's still the longest tenured Celtic on the team. So I could see how he could be a grading, big brother type figure voice that they're just tired of hearing it from. And there's a lot of evidence over the years that even though they're simpatico and they play together and they play well together, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart have had spats. With that said, last year, and this is something weird that's actually hasn't reigned true so far, and it could just be because Jaylen's hurt, but last year, one of the best assisting duos in the league was actually Smart to Jaylen, like in the entire NBA, and that hasn't reigned true yet this year, but I don't know, that just made me think of it. But I could see Smart being a real, not intentionally, but being a stopping roadblock for Jaylen filling that void as the voice of the team. And I think that maybe if Smart was moved for someone that just fits in play style wise, that Jaylen could really take that mantle of the voice and be what the team needs in terms of the motivational guy, the locker room leader, where he isn't comfortable doing that with Smart there because of what Smart means to him. And again, I love Marcus Smart. I think the team can succeed, but I think there's a lot to be said in terms of what value he carries, what it could mean when he leaves, that it just makes sense. It makes sense that he's the guy that gets traded.
Random aside, you know where I'd love to see Marcus Smart?
Tell me.
The Miami Heat. Just him with Jimmy Butler. That team would be so mean. Oh, it'd be so much fun.
Big mean.
Bringing in some backup for the next time they play Denver.
Hell yeah.
Because of our time here, I think we should run to a close. We can do trivia on a future episode. Biddies, how do you feel about Cade being the choice for Rookie of the Year now instead of Evan Mobley?
I think we got a neck and neck race, and I'm into it. And if Evan Mobley makes the playoffs, though, and especially if they make it as like a straight up playoffs, no play in, I think you got to give it to him because he is the difference maker on that roster from last year to this year. But in for a race.
I said last week that if they're the 4 seed come All-Star voting, that I think I would choose Mobley to be an All-Star. And if he gets as an All-Star, he's probably going to be the Rookie of the Year. But Cade's been incredible. Steve, any final thoughts?
I am just very excited to see what's going to happen this next week. My fantasy team is a complete disaster. The league's a disaster.
It's awful.
And
everything is decimated.
I just hope we can get through this and enjoy some good basketball come summertime.
With that being said, thank you for joining us on the My Wheelhouse Basketball podcast. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Listeners, rate and review and do all that action. Come back and listen more. We'll be back again next Sunday. Peace out.